Hey guys, welcome back to another Architecture Real Talk. So today is a fascinating topic that drive a lot of the shorts on my YouTube channel now, is all about architecture anthropology. Now, anthropology is a study of humanity as we know it. It is the condition of human behavior. It is the variation of human behavior due to societal constraints, due to technology, and that is what anthropology is. Combine that with architecture, it is the human living condition and how society evolves with it. Now, as a complex topic, it is better to go by example. So the first example I have for you guys is that of light. So in a secondary school, or even if you look at an office for an adult, you have more stringent lumen requirements. That is the amount of light that hits the surface. And you can argue that is due to the fact that there's fine print, that there are people who are doing higher level of math, there are people who are pretty much going through a higher degree of education. And you can argue the latter for the elementary school. You can simply say, hey, the kids need nap time. There shouldn't be that use of high amount of light because they're using their motor skills. But the exact opposite is true. What happens is when a human being comes through a growth cycle of toddler years, they grow much slower. They build lower levels of melatonin, right? Melatonin builds up into your system the longer you're awake. So when it comes to a person, when they're in their growth stages, such as puberty, you have a high amount of melatonin being produced inside that human body. And in order for them to grow, they need to sleep. Well, studies and research have shown that if you place about 5 or 10% higher amount of daylight or fluorescent light, artificial daylight, you can reduce those hormones buildup and you can keep that person awake. Even adults build higher amount of melatonin because our body cannot process it fast enough. That's why kids are so full of energy and adults are slower, right? But we pretty much slow down by actually producing artificial light. And that's just one of the examples, right? We also use natural daylights in our supermarkets, not because it's economical, it's because we're more likely to buy that particular product because it's directly under daylight. It influences us to buy. It's the same reason why, if you look at it spatially, every supermarket is laid out in a manner where you enter into a bakery or a Starbucks, right? Without mentioning names, you end up enticing that person's hunger before they buy something. And you're more likely to window shop and grab extra items off the shelf, provided that you're hungry. Right? It's another reason why you scatter out the bread, milk, and eggs. Despite the fact that they're food staple items, you can put them together. But what you want to do is you want to make the person meander. Why would you make a person meander? Because the stores are designed. So if you're trying to spend just $3, $4 on that milk before you walk out of the store, you end up spending $20. It is by design. You were actually forced to pick up those items because you found them enticing. You were already hungry. You were walking past them already, and they pretty much attracted you to buy them. And stores spend a lot of time researching this behavior. And this is part of architecture anthropology, right? It goes beyond that. You look at a car dealership, for example. The second highest money spent in a car dealership is that in a restroom, right after the showroom. Why is that? Because when you spend money and provide detail in that restroom, and there's a man who's trying to buy a car, he will end up seeking a safe haven to make that decision. He will end up finding a place of refuge or confinement so he can feel secure. And when he's sitting there and trying to make a decision of purchase of a large item, he will look around and he'll say, you know what? This place is detailed pretty well. This dealership probably can be trusted. And you have allowed architecture to influence this person's decision to whether to buy a car based on the detail provided. This hand soap is nice. This stall is nice. When he's sitting there inside the restroom and he's like finicking and playing around with these items, he's like, man, this place is built really well. Let's buy this car. You influence behavior through architecture. And it goes even beyond that. You look at a house. A lot of my videos about the house recently been about bedrooms, closets, right? And this reflects what we are as a society. We say we're not materialistic, yet our closets are growing, right? We say, now you have to think about it in this perspective. We have slowly pushed the secondary bedroom out closer and closer to the right next to the garage, to the front door, which is the least secure part of our house. And yet we have slowly but surely moved our primary bedroom closer and closer to the back of the house. At the same time, we value our privacy over the security of our own children. How does that reflect to us as a society? Now you take the same example going back to the schools. We have shrunken our library. The amount of books in our libraries have been shrinking since 2000. We're about 50% capacity in terms of book, what used to be there in 2000s as it is now. Only because those bookshelves had to be cut in half to allow for a person to oversee any active shooter. There's no places to hide. There's no, you have to look through the books, look through the crack to find the shooter. There's no type of instances where the shooter can hide if he's wearing an assault rifle, God forbid. But we valued security of that child so much that we sacrificed his education. He comes home and we sacrifice his security for our privacy. What does that say to us about our society? Right? You can keep looking at that. Like if you look in the past, right? The brutalist architecture of Nazi Germany resided on cold concrete walls to make a statement of structure. There's no way you can enter those buildings and say you feel like you're at home. So the architecture changed the way you carried yourself, your demeanor, your behavior. And this is the point. What's the point of all of these examples? What is the essence of this talk? Why are we even talking about these random facts about buildings and how humans are connected to it, right? The essence of this talk is, herein lies the definition of what architecture truly is. It is the ability to capture space that invoke feeling, right? Whenever you notice architecture, what type of restaurant do you want to take your wife on the first date or her 10th anniversary? Or how should your honeymoon night look like? The low lighting, the whole ambiance of that restaurant is confined inside those four walls. The experiences you inhibit or you will exhibit in your lifetime, the memories that you have, are being created by what is being put between those walls. You have the ability to control how a person feels, how a person perceives the space based on those feelings. One of the things that I'm fascinated about is trying to capture my own feeling in a house. I'll give you an example. One of the things that I felt the most comfort in, I was on a construction site, walking through the ice and snow. A groggy day where the water soaked into my boots. My construction boots became heavier. And when I'm walking through that snow and I find myself going back to my house and I take those shoes off and I put on a warm clothing coming straight out of the dryer to grab a bowl of soup or a cup of coffee, and you sit there and drink it on a soft couch, a velvet couch, not a leather couch, so it's not even cold. And that warmth, that comfort, that care that surrounds you. I want to capture that in a house. I want to create a house that can capture that emotion, that feeling that I felt that very moment. It is a very powerful feeling to be able to capture those moments. When you design architecture, You are worried about what is the pressure of that pool, how much water is being held there. You're worried about how to get the tile on site. You're worried about how to get this one-of-a-kind chandelier from a ceiling. You're worried about comprising this house as a beautiful statement, right? All of these finicking details. But when a client walks in, and the point of that space was to blow them away, to people to be awed. Just, wow, look at that. Hey, there's a pool there. Hey, there's a fountain in the pool, and there's garden. I can see through the glass. And all of those moments, you forget the details. You're not talking to the client about, oh, that tile is one of a kind. You know what you're talking about? You're not even talking. You're just witnessing the client exhibit architecture. The emotions that you have brought. It is one of the most powerful experiences as an architect to see a client experience your architecture and be lost of words. And if you can capture that in your building, capture the spaces that create those memories, your architecture becomes timeless. It creates a movement unlike any other. We talked about, my previous talk was about how technology have made duplicate copies of architecture. We talked about how architecture is becoming repetitive. It is mundane, and people are exploiting software. Where are we headed? Analyze anthropology. Learn from what we already have. There are people distracted by phones. How do you address that in your building? Can you create entertainment? Can you create movement in architecture? Can your architecture become haptic? Can it become kinetic? These are the words that we should be looking at. When there's all this foolishness around us, human beings are ignoring buildings because they're so repetitive, they're so mundane. Your house plans look the same. And then you have all of this rich data about what human behavior is. Create something powerful. Create something inspiring. Change the world that we live in.
Follow for more content.